Welcome to the Draft Professor, everybody. I am joined today by the big O, Jerry Ostrowski. Jerry, we've been chatting backstage for a little bit. We got a little bit of college basketball going on.
Yeah.
How is Tulsa doing right now?
Tulsa is up 82-79 with 6.4 seconds left. They're getting ready to shoot the second free throw of a double bonus. So we'll see how this goes. Obviously, I'm a Tulsa alum. I got my Tulsa shirt on today. So big game for them, man. They win this one. That's 29 wins on the season. They get to the semifinals of the NIT. So uh, pretty excited for them.
Well, and I think you're being really modest because you're not just a Tulsa alum, you're also in their Hall of Fame, right?
I might be. I might be in their Hall of Fame. my jersey might be retired too, but who's
Yeah.
going to say? Although it did come out of retirement 2 years ago for some bum named Owen Ostrowski, some guy that claims he's my son. He wore it his senior season at Tulsa, so which was fun. But yeah, so big Tulsa ties down here.
And it's good to have you on. We're going to discuss, Buffalo has a new need because Ryan
Oh yes,
Vandemark has left in free agency. So Buffalo has a need for a backup tackle.
yep.
And how do you assess the tackle room at Buffalo with Grable, potential free agent, or a draft pick? Like, is there a way that you think that Brandon Beane needs to handle this in the next few weeks?
Well, if you remember correctly, last year, and Tylen Grable was drafted out of UCF a couple years ago, and Tylen Grable was a guy who was incredibly athletic. Cromer liked his athleticism. Cromer liked his bend. Cromer used the term a lot. He sits on his hips. That's kind of his big nouveau term. Sits on his hips, meaning he gets his hips down and back. He's flexible, athletic, smart. And they brought him in. He's kind of a little bit of a project. I mean, I'm sure you guys evaluated him when he came out. Kind of a real long, athletic guy.
Yes.
Didn't have much to him, right? But he was supreme athlete. And gets to Buffalo, they get weight on him. And even now, when he played in that, he played some this season after the concussion. That last Jets game just looked real long. Still, kind of had that young puppy look to him where he could fill in, right? But obviously saw something in him. He's a guy that can play, I think. He's also a guy that I think has the possibility to battle for that left guard spot as well with Alec Anderson. So that being said, Vandermark moves on. There's an obvious need for probably a vet type person to come in and maybe give a little bit of depth, considering that Grable's had some concussion issues if you're really relying on him to be the swing tackle. So I would like a veteran type guy, but I also believe they need to draft one as well. And this might be right now, we've talked about it in the past, a perfect situation to draft that left tackle or that tackle that maybe could be a swing guard as well if you needed them. But I do think they need to get a couple in the building.
Yeah, and there is a draft professor that had Grable high on his list. It's actually really interesting because he's a Steelers guy. It's
Right.
Will, but Will for 3 years, Will's favorite guys were all acquired by Buffalo. So
Oh,
he was
wow.
really big on Andreessen. The next year he was really big on Grable. Last year he was really high on Deion Walker.
Wow.
And Buffalo grabbed all three. So I always look forward to learning who Will's guys are because it's usually he and I are poking each other during the draft, like Buffalo just got another one of Will's guys. Um,
And what's funny is about the Deion Walker thing. I mean, I watched a lot of Deion Walker film last year, and I was kind of a stay away from taking him
yep.
guy. And then once he gets picked by Buffalo, you start doing a little more digging into it. And then all of a sudden you understand he's had the back injury, which makes sense about how he looked on film. He had the back injury and all that stuff. It kind of came along. So, yeah, I could see that. But he was definitely an interesting prospect.
Yeah. So when you look at the draft class with some of the tackles that we were looking at from October, through December,
Right.
anybody stick out to you as a player that you're thinking, hey, you take a day 3 flyer on one of these guys that's just going to need to sit and work on his technique for a year or two?
Well, I mean, there's a list of guys that you can look at that possibly could do that. I don't know about my thing is, Jim, is I don't necessarily know if I want to bring a guy in to sit around to work on technique. Obviously, there is a lot of that to do, but also I'm thinking you could probably find a guy later in the draft that's probably more ready to play than you think. I think there's definitely some people like that. Like I've liked Cage Casey for a while now, the guy from
Boise, right?
Boise State, 6'5", 311. I know there's a lot of people feel he's a guard. Some like him a lot, some don't like him. I enjoyed the way he played. I thought he's a guy that can play inside and out. I thought he was a good tackle. I didn't think he was overwhelmed by anything. I thought he's pretty athletic. Relatively young guy too, kind of a redshirt junior. The other guy, and remember what we talked about? We talked about this with Caleb Tiernan about the bringing in a tackle and maybe that guy that could play tackle eventually, but in the meantime goes inside to help with depth issues. I think Trey Zune's a guy that could do that. The tackle from Texas A&M, a guy that's listed, he's listed as, a tackle, a center, a guard. He's kind of done everything. He's 6'6", 319, big-bodied guy. I like him as well. So, there are some guys out there that are late day guys that can help, so to speak. But I do think there's enough talent that you could get one without really just having to break him down and build him back up again.
Yeah, and one tackle with all of the different mock drafts that are happening that seems to be getting some round 3 and early day 3 love is Demetrius Crownover from Texas A&M.
Yeah.
So what stands out about Crownover is that he checks most of the measurement boxes.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really any doubt that he's going to be able to get a shot at playing an NFL tackle, just from the measurement standpoint.
Right.
You have any additional thoughts on Crownover?
He was much better in 23 and 24 than he was in 25. For whatever reason, he kind of fell off a little bit this season. Played more snaps, gave up 2 sacks this year, a couple of quarterback hits, a bunch of hurries, 23 hurries, and it's funny. I don't know if all of that is on him. I've
a quarterback problem at Texas
yes,
A&M,
and I've talked about this with Casey Concepcion, and people want to kind of hammer him on his drop rate, but I'm like, you got to see the guy that's throwing the ball. And if you watch Reed, he wasn't a guy that necessarily just sat in the pocket. The thing about Crownover that's interesting, and it kind of goes with his body size, he's an immense dude, right? So while he's a decent run blocker, especially in zone type schemes, he does struggle in pass blocking. That's where his struggle is, especially in true pass block stuff, where he's definitely just setting to pass protect. Really, really struggles. So it's gonna take a lot with him. I'm not a big fan of Crownover at all. I don't mind some of the tall guys, but some of these guys that are 6'7", 336, they just can't bend, can't move. And I think that's kind of what you're looking at with him.
And then another tackle who's going to fit into that tall category. I don't know that you and I and Owen podcasted on him, but the other offensive line podcast did, and that's Markel Bell.
Yeah.
Who's the other tackle from Miami. So he is 6 feet 9 inches tall. That is not a misprint. 340 pounds. I believe I saw 37-inch arms, if I saw that right.
No, you did. You saw it completely right.
Now
there's a lot to like about Markel Brown. One of the things that, he didn't play in 2024, he had 543 snaps at left tackle. In 2025, he had 1,029 snaps. He's a guy that's got some durability to him, can play quite a bit. The one thing about him is he's kind of the opposite of a Crownover, right? Normally, these guys that are so long really have issues with the guys that we're looking at in Buffalo to draft, right? The R. Mason Thomases and those types of guys, the shorter outside linebacker ghost rush type guys, right? And his pass protection grades are great. Where he has his issues is run blocking. He's not that great of a run blocker. He's decent at zone. He's decent running zone, and if he gets with somebody, it's got to be zone specific because his gap grades are not good at all, and that's because so long can't get out of his stance, can't get inside, can't move. But if you stick that big body next to another big body and they come together, then that's a little bit different, right? Needs to be with a heavy zone type team, but I tend to shy away from tackles that are that tall. I mean, they've got to have some, like the Spencer Browns of the world. Spencer's tall, but he's also like basketball athletic, right? I mean, there's a difference. Spencer Brown, like when I was at training camp this past year, when you stand next to him, he might possibly be the narrowest tackle in the league. I mean, his shoulders are narrow. He is just a narrow-built dude. But he's long and his athleticism is off the charts. So it works, right? Some of these guys are just too big. You just can't get down. You can't get down to the lower half. It's not possible. But but again, he's a good pass protector. Just has some issues in run blocking, especially gap schemes.
Yep. So Kenny, it's really good to see you here. Kenny was here. Randall did some mock drafts at 7. Kenny was here. Okay. So Austin Barber's a really good name. So Jerry, I did a mock draft with a big group. I was drafting for the Bengals. I got Austin Barber, I think, in round 6.
Right.
I know that when you and Owen looked at Austin Barber, you guys saw a first round tackle. So
I was pretty high on him, yeah, but I don't know if I was first round tackle, but I was pretty high on him.
Yeah. So what did you like about Barber?
The one thing about Barber is I think he's a pretty he's kind of an all-around type guy. I mean, he pass protects well, he runs well. I think the games that I watched were the last 2 games of the season, which were Tennessee and Florida State, and those were probably his best 2 games. And the thing about Barber is he's got durability, he's got some nasty to him. Now, the one thing that gives me a red flag about Barber is in 23 and 24, he wasn't particularly great, but in 25 had his best season. So, kind of look at him maybe as he's getting better and better. So there's ways to look at that. Red flag, yeah, he's had 1 good year out of 3, but also you look at his grades, they've gradually gotten better to where this season has been his best. So, yeah, he's a guy that can pass protect, probably not as good of a pass blocker as a run blocker. He's got some nasty to him. He'll get after people, he'll finish blocks. He's a people mover, which I think, seems pretty like a generic term. Like, yeah, well, most of these guys are. Well, that's not the case. I mean, I look at Austin Barber, and he can actually get movement by himself. He doesn't need, a lot of extra help. So, yeah, I mean, it shows he's got a basketball background. Definitely, it's 6'6", 314. I think he would be a really good day 3 guy. I think I've kind of gotten off of him. I think Owen liked him a lot more than I did, if I remember correctly. The guy that I liked from Florida was Jake Slaughter. That's my guy, who I think is a dude. But yeah, I think he's a guy that could be viable in the right system.
And then Kenny's got another name. So I know Owen really likes Keegan Trost. I believe Trost is from Missouri.
Yeah, I didn't really grade him. He's another guy that had a really good senior season, 891 offensive snaps, only gave up 1 sack, only gave up 2 quarterback hits and 4 hurries. Before he moved to right tackle, he had played predominantly left tackle. He kind of split in 24 before moving to right tackle fully, which kind of that's because Caden Green, I guess, is playing left tackle at Missouri. But yeah, I know a lot of people do like Trost. I need to do a little more studying on him. Again, just a road grader kind of guy, really good zone blocker, really good running, blocking zone in the run game. Not quite as good at gap schemes, but he is sufficient. And then his pass protection is very good.
I believe Frost has an arm length concern. So there's, I believe, a reason that he would be projected to kick inside.
Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, but I'll be honest with you, man, who doesn't have an arm length concern anymore? I mean, everybody's got some kind of arm length concern. I mean, every time you turn around, it's like part of me wants to just draft a team of nothing but short arm guys and go out and whip everybody's rear end, and then all of a sudden the trend in the league will be everybody's trying to find guys with the shortest arms possible, right? So, but yeah, I could see that.
Yep. And then I think another player, Owen was a little bit higher on Drew Shelton from Penn State than you were.
I like Drew Shelton. I think Drew Shelton's got a lot of development to do. A lot of development. 6'5", 306, but he looks skinny. Like this is, I think that's the thing about, so when you talk about guys later on that you want to develop, Drew Shelton's a guy that I think is that dude. I liked his motor. I thought his motor was really, really good. I liked the way he played. He played hard, but he kind of was out of control. Excuse me. I thought he was a bit out of control. Again, just kind of hit the scene this year. 23 and 24 weren't very good years for him, but this year was much better. But I think you're projecting him as a guy that's another couple years away. So, Jim, when you made the comment earlier, a guy that you can deconstruct and coach up and get in the weight room, Shelton to me is that guy. I think Shelton needs time in the building, needs to learn, definitely needs to hit that weight room even more, put some weight on. He's got a lot of athletic ability. He just has to get bigger and stronger and be under more control.
Okay, and then as I'm looking at the offensive tackle board, Jude Bowery from Boston College. One of the things that makes Bowery unique is that he plays left tackle. So a significant number of the players that you and I have already spoke about are right tackles.
Right.
Bowery played left tackle at Boston College. I remembered he wasn't one of your favorites when we covered tackles earlier. But what do you think of the Boston College tackle?
I mean, you're looking at another huge man, right? 6'5", 311. I didn't like his bend very much. I thought he lumbered a little bit and kind of was a little bit deficient in movement. His pass protection grades show that he does struggle in pass protection, and I'm sure it's against those guys that we're wanting in Buffalo, those shorter outside linebacker types that have become, everybody's trying to find the next Micah Parsons, right? So there's this army, this fleet of Micah Parsons type rushers that are undersized but are speed, twitchy guys that give tackles like Bowery issues. Run blocking, hey man, he is what he is. I mean, he's just a big old dude. He can lock on another zone block guy that does real well in zone blocking. Had a much better 2024 than 2025. So I think this is, again, if you bring this guy in, he's another development dude. So this would be a development piece. So Bowery is a development guy. I think Shelton's a guy that could really develop and things like that. I think Trey Zune, while he's more polished, he's kind of like I guess you could say he has a little bit of Brian Parker in him, kind of without a home. Everybody's projecting him where he's going to be. We're going to project him to be a center, project him to be a guard. Well, let's get his ass in the building to do what he's been doing all season long, and then we'll figure that out. That's one thing that I think it's not fair to these young kids, especially if you some of these places that have depth that you can hide them out and you can do those types of things and develop along at other positions. But, you take a Trey Zune that hasn't played much center, or you take a Brian Parker that hasn't played center at all, and the first day in the door, that's what he's doing. That's a big ask. So let's get the player comfortable with what he knows first and then go from there.
And so one of the reasons, I didn't necessarily bring up Trey Zune, is that I think he'll be gone in the draft before Buffalo would be looking for a tackle.
I think it very well could be the case.
Right, because Zune could play any of the three interior offensive line positions.
Right. Which
to me is going to push him higher slightly than a player like Slaughter or Brailsford or just insert any of these guys that are center only. If you have 3 position flexibility on the interior, I'd have a hard time imagining they'll get past halfway through round 4.
Right. I
Right.
think, yeah,
Where
I
oh,
agree with that. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, and where I was going with that is that I think for Buffalo to be drafting an offensive tackle, it is not one of the top 5 needs on the roster.
No.
It's a need, but Brandon Beane has done like Vandemark was a free agent that we picked up, and I don't even believe that he was drafted. So he was a UDFA. We picked him up, practice squad, promoted to the active roster. We've done the same thing in Buffalo with Richard Guriage, right? Where these
Right.
are late round offensive linemen or undrafted, spend a year on the practice squad, then they move to the active roster. So I would think that round 5 is the earliest that we would look at a tackle, but it's more of, again, we do need one more.
Right.
So
We need one
um
more, and it's to the point where Jim, do you go out and get the veteran that you can sign for $2 million, or do you go ahead and draft one to develop? I think it's pretty. I think this whole Ryan Vandermark thing in Buffalo is pretty telling. I think it kind of shows that maybe they are okay with Alec Anderson playing guard, and they're okay with the backup tackle situation they have with
Grable.
with yeah, not with Grable, exactly.
Yep.
So we'll see how that goes. But also remember they still got Nick. You remember Nick Bodeker that was from Ole
Yeah.
Miss that was
Yes.
drafted by him. Well, he's back he was back on the practice squad this past season because I talked to him in the at a Saturday practice when I was up there. And so I know they they signed him, I believe, to a futures contract, so he's back around as well.
So Kenny, this is a really good question. So when we covered Diego Pounds on Draft Professor, the evals didn't come back greatly favorable. So it wouldn't surprise me to see both players go undrafted. If I had to guess as to which one would be drafted, it would be Pounds. But
Right.
with the number of people that are podcasting at Draft Professor, the number of people that have mentioned Diego Pounds, I can definitely count on one hand. And there's like close to 90 people that have podcasted here. Maybe 5 have a draftable grade on it.
Right.
Maybe. But again, I think Diego Pounds, he's checking some of the measurement boxes. I don't have his measurements in front of me.
6'6", 335. He's a huge man.
Yeah.
6'6", 335, and has not played particularly well. Although that's a durable guy. He's in 2023 played 780 snaps at left tackle. 24 played 779, and last year played 1,076 snaps at left tackle. So he's been out there playing. Gave up no sacks in 25, but if you watched that quarterback, it wouldn't shock you why he didn't give up any sacks, because my man could get out of a lot of stuff at Ole Miss. But 3 quarterback hits, 13 hurries, but not it's funny. You look at him and he's immense, and he's a guy that's actually pretty good at pass protection, but his run blocking is terrible. So you're going to have to figure out how to teach this kid how to run block. I mean, everything, zone blocking, gap schemes, whatever. His run blocking is not good at all. So, to me anyway, that looks at, well, you got this huge guy that you teach how to vertical pass set, and he can eat up space, and he's fine as far as pass protection. At 6'6", 335, I guess he's not athletic enough at that size, has to either cut weight, get in better shape, or he's going to struggle in the NFL if he can't pass block in college. Or, run block in college, excuse me.
And then Ethan on Anyawa. I think I did
I
that
don't know
okay.
nothing about him at all.
So I believe that's Ohio State. Yeah. So Kenny gave it to me here. So I believe that's Ohio State. And again, basically, Kenny, the way that it works at Draft Professors, like I'll pull the different people in our group chat and I'll say, okay, what offensive tackles are you looking at in this draft class with draftable grades? And Ethan didn't make the cut. Pounds did make that initial cut, like when we were looking for that list in September and October. But the Ohio State tackle did not.
Right.
So, and maybe the helmet gets drafted.
Right.
I mean, if you're
That's
day
a good
3,
point. That's a very good point. Yeah.
you can do better than it, or you can do a lot worse
Yeah.
than an SEC or a Big Ten offensive
Yeah.
tackle.
That's a very good point. Very good point.
Like if you're having to choose between, let's say, somebody from Wake Forest in the ACC or somebody that's been battle tested in the SEC or the Big Ten, there's a difference. So,
you talked about Markel Brown or Markel Bell earlier. For as big as he is, he did run a 5.36. That's not bad at all. That's not bad at all. That's
do you remember what your 40 was, Jerry?
It was like a 5.2 or something like that. I was not great at the combine, by no means. By no means.
Okay.
That was not my jam. My jam was playing football. And then you look at Diego Pounds, okay? So Diego Pounds, we just were talking about, he ran a 5.15, which is crazy.
So there are some other Big Ten offensive linemen. So,
right,
Jerry, I think we covered Riley Mahlman from Wisconsin.
I did not.
Have been his. Okay, so that was his teammate that we covered then.
Yeah, I did not.
And
I didn't cover any Wisconsin linemen.
How about Tristan Lee from Clemson?
No, we looked at Blake Miller from Clemson.
Got it. Okay. So I think the other offensive line podcast covered both of them.
And Blake Miller is the one that actually was having some high projections as far as where he might get picked.
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? Because when you and Owen covered Blake Miller, you guys are like, round 3, day 3.
I wasn't a big fan of his. Now, he had a good combine. He jumped 32. Yep. He ran a 5.04, which whatever, but he did bench press 32 reps.
Yep.
And had arm length of 34.25. So it wasn't like he's not super long armed, but he's not super short armed either. So yeah, I mean, definite guy. I mean, a guy that has that has a chance for sure.
Yep. So Kenny, this is kind of the part of my entertainment with Draft Professor, right? Is from October to December, every Draft Professor's getting down and, they're doing their evals. And then we do our first mock draft in January. And like Owen saw Blake Miller going round 1. He saw Emmanuel Pregnon going round 1 after his evals were like round 3, day 3. And Owen's reaction to that keeps me entertained for the better part of the next 4 months of the draft cycle. So
yeah, so 34.25, you're basically average. You're average to a little bit above average as far as arm length.
So Newt is here. So Newt, curious, who are your favorite day 3 offensive tackles that can play offensive tackle? So Newt is who podcast with Owen on Wednesdays. So, and then Kenny, feel free to drop if you've got any more day 3 offensive tackles that you like. Feel free to drop them in. I'm looking at the player boards. We've covered nearly everybody on the first page. I think Emil Wagner of Notre Dame. So he didn't declare until after we were done. So like I didn't add him to the list that you and Owen did because I thought he was going back to school. Turns out he declared, but Emil Wagner of Notre Dame and Buffalo heavily scouted Notre Dame. heavily. So I think Emil Wagner would be a good day 3 right tackle prospect as well. So you've mentioned Casey. So Wagner, okay, so that's a new name for me, I think. Do I have? Oh, wait, that was who I just mentioned, Emil Wagner. Got it. Took me a minute to figure out which player that was. Okay. And then Kenny's
Dude,
like,
I also said Cage Casey as well. That
yep.
was a guy that I like. I like Casey a bit. I think he's better than people are making him out to be. I think he's all right.
And there's several people that like Casey on day 2. Not everybody is day 2 on Cage Casey, but there's a lot of people that are. So to me, especially if you need more than one offensive line spot filled, I like drafting a player like Cage Casey because maybe he can be
Yeah.
your tackle that you kick inside. And it's the same thing like with Spencer Fano. To me, the team that drafts Spencer Fano likely has more than one offensive line spot open because if he can't handle tackle, you can kick him inside. But if you needed Fano to play tackle and you drafted him to play tackle and he doesn't do it well, you may have misused a premium draft asset. So
I agree with that. Do you guys and I is Newt still with us? If Newt's still with us, and I kind of wanted his opinion on and I know he's not a day 3 guy, he's a guy that's kind of I think he's probably all over the board on evaluation, but Max Sahanakor from Arizona State, kind of what his thoughts were on him. He's really intriguing to me because he's so new to football. And he seems to be an incredibly good athlete, and he's a large man. I think his ceiling is high. I wanted to know Newt's thoughts on him if he had them.
So the chat, feel free to tell us on Max Ianachor from Arizona State. So Newt says offensive tackle 7. Okay, so if I'm looking at the board, Newt, I assume you have Freeling higher, Lomu higher, Proctor higher, Fano higher, Maui Noah higher. That's 5. Newt, who's the 6th tackle that I'm missing? Is it Tiernan or Miller?
If it's not Tiernan, I'll be disappointed because Newt was all over Tiernan.
So yeah, really curious on that, Newt. Yeah, okay, yep. It was Tiernan. Okay. So yeah, this was a player that Owen and Newt agreed on. And I remember that Owen was high on Tiernan. But Newt was as well. Okay.
Now Tiernan has the dreaded short-armed label. Because I actually heard one of the draft professors on one of your shows, and I don't remember who it was, said that historically, and I don't know where he found it from, if this is true, but if you look at historical numbers of tackles that are as tall as Tiernan with arms as short as his are, it's like they just don't pan out.
That is probably Drew Collins, because I think you were watching, or no, it was you were. Oh yeah, and there's so many because I think Taylor and Steve did a pretty good breakdown, but I think you and Owen were watching an interior offensive line show, and I don't remember if it was a Thursday show or a Monday show.
So arm length is 32 1/4 for Tiernan, which puts that that is basically below 33 is worst. So that's actually below 33. So his arm length is basically off the charts, not measurable at 6'8", 323. So, and then again, a hand of a 9 is also 10th percentile.
So thoughts on Newt's comments on Ianachor there?
His issues are fixable. He needs to continue to develop those technical skills of hand. Yeah, I mean that's exactly. I mean, you're 100% correct. And the fine line with him is going to be, because that's what I'm saying. He's so new to football, and he's still really trying to learn the intricacies of it. Because I think he just played I'm not sure if he played in high school or not. Might have just went straight JUCO and then came to Arizona State or however it worked. But the thing about him is his athleticism and upside so good. He has a chance to be so good. It's just how do you bring him along to where you don't break his confidence?
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
You want him to play because the only way he's going to learn is by playing, but are you putting him in harm's way to where his confidence wanes? Almost a little like the Campbell situation in New England this year. Campbell's going to be fine. That whole thing, that whole witch hunt about his arm length, he's going to be fine. Will Campbell's going to be fine. But still, he lost some confidence, and now he's having to answer questions. So be interested to see what they do with him.
So I like the Jurassic Park comment there, Newt.
Yeah.
That made me smile, at least on the inside. Okay, so Jerry, I'm looking at the tackle list. And I think Alex Harkey from Oregon I think that was somebody that we covered. But again, I think that was just a day 3, just a guy.
Right.
I don't remember anything. I don't remember anything that you or Owen was saying about Harkey where you'd be pounding the table. But again, that would be a day 3 tackle prospect that somebody's going to be bringing into their building.
Right. I think I missed him. I didn't get him on my list, or he was on the list and I missed it and went over him. So I didn't necessarily grade him.
And then I think nearly every other tackle, I think Owen's looking into the Memphis tackles. Because I think Owen and Newt are doing their offensive linemen. And I said, Owen, before you do the podcast with Newt, at least check out the 2 Memphis guys, because at least one of Travis Burke and Chris Adams is getting some late day 2 attention in a very thin tackle class.
Travis Burke is a tarantula. I mean, he's 6'9", 325, 34.25-inch arms. He's a huge man. I mean, his wingspan is immense. He ran a 5.17. Vertical 27, broad jump was 8.11, not bad. He's very, very tall, but for being tall, he is a rather good drive blocker as far as getting guys off the ball. He does have flexibility and bend, so it'll be interesting. But still, there's these guys, man, I keep telling you, no matter how much bend they have, no matter what they can do, they still have issues with those NFL-type pass rushers. And, I think a guy like Burke is going to be maybe a little bit scheme specific, possibly, because he will struggle with some of that. So that's a big part of it.
Yep. So that is a pretty good summary of a relatively thin offensive tackle class.
Yeah, the run's going to be early, isn't it? There are going to be some guys that make some money that probably shouldn't make the money they're making.
I hope 7 or 8 offensive tackles get taken before Buffalo makes their first pick.
Yeah.
It's a dream. It's a dream.
Well, I think there's a good chance that a lot of them will. I mean, you're looking at a lot of picks. I mean, there's some guys that are definites. I mean, look at Monroe Freeling. I mean, I like him a lot. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think he's a great prospect. But in a strong tackle year, as Monroe Freeling talked about as a first-round pick, probably not. Probably a second, maybe a third. I still think he has a lot to work on, but I think he's a guy that definitely has a lot of ability. But, yeah, I mean, Lomu, Proctor. I mean, there's guys. You get those guys off the board, Austin Barber, bring it. Come on. Let's get them going, because 26 – I still think it's more advantageous for us to move out of 26, because all the things we need are still going to be there in the upper half of the second round. But still, you never know. Somebody might just drop out of the sky that you can't give up. You have to take,
Yep. Well, Jerry, do you want to let everybody know where all of your other content is?
Yeah.
And we can close this out and call it a Tuesday.
Yeah, obviously myself, John Feenan, Joe Miller. We started Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network. You can catch us on there. We got shows all week long. My show is called 7 Days of Sunday. I'm with Zig Fracassi. Western New York native and host of XM Sirius NFL. Does shows on the weekend, does sports updates all week, and we do a show Wednesday nights, 8 Eastern, 7 Central. Then I do Bill Squad with Joe Marino and Jeremy White from WGR in Buffalo. Bill Squad is a Locked On product, and we're on Mondays and Thursdays in the off season. We go live at 12:30 in the afternoon, and then just recently, myself and Joe Marino have been doing some afternoon kind of little shorter content type pieces, more discussion type shows on Locked On Bills. So that's where you can find all that. Plus, in third, obviously Tuesday night Draft Professor. Yep. So, yeah, that's where you can find me.
Well, the day 3 offensive tackle, I actually got the idea from watching you and John.
Oh, really?
I was watching you and John, and you guys, and maybe it was when you, and it could have been with Joe Marino, but some of it was, do you take Grable, and if he's playing guard, can you kick him to tackle, or does he need to stay as a backup tackle because you don't want to move two guys or you don't want to have 2 new offensive linemen if one guy gets hurt.
Right. If Grable's playing guard, you got to bring a tackle in. You got to bring a tackle in. Because that was me. That was my thing. And I don't like my backups being starters at other positions, so that if something happens, we have to blow up the whole line instead of just change one guy out. So if he is truly a prospect for a tackle spot, or a guard spot rather, the left guard spot specifically, they need to find another tackle.
And then my other comment on Grable, you had also mentioned it at the very beginning of the podcast, but I don't have the data in front of me, but it feels to me like Grable has been injured for more games than he's been on the active roster. I don't. Yeah. It's close.
Yeah.
And if that is who you're relying on to protect the best quarterback in the league, if there's an injury, you need just insurance on that injury projection as well. So, for Jerry Ostrowski, for myself, and the 90 podcasters at the Draft Professor, thanks for tuning in, everybody. We will see you on a podcast again tomorrow. And good luck to Randall's wife and Owen. They couldn't be here tonight, but thinking about both of you guys. So thank you.
Thinking about you guys.